Hi, this is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoyed this critical thought, a detailed discussion on game design, and be sure to subscribe and you can pitch future critical thought topics. For today's critical thought, we're going to be talking about why build orders are bad for game design. Now, depending upon your background, whether you focus on console or PC gaming, you may or may not have heard the term build order before, but it is a very popular term for strategy games, or basically any game that's built around the player making a series of decisions. This is a part of the idea behind the false choice, which was an earlier critical thought. If you missed that, a false choice is when an option is either so good that you would be hurting yourself not taking it, or it's so bad that taking it is always a detriment to your play. And the concept of the build order, from my own experience, has been seen in 4X or grand strategy games. The ones that I've heard this the most from would be something like Sid Meier's Civilization. And for longtime fans of Civilization, you probably know about the fan forum Civ Fanatics. And basically, a few weeks after every major Civ game is out, there are hardcore fans breaking the game down to figure out the best ways to play it. And this is when a build order comes into play. Another part of build orders is the concept of min-maxing, which I'm sure we did a critical thought on earlier. If we haven't, please let me know because that is certainly a topic we need to talk about. But to quickly summarize, it's the philosophy of playing the game at the most optimal way so that you are spending the least amount of effort or resources to get the most gain. Now, when it comes to build orders, the thing about it is that this can work in either linear or open-ended games. Obviously, in a title like Civilization, the map is randomly generated or a new seed is created on each play. So the player doesn't have the exact map. But what they do know are the basic conditions and what they need to do starting out. And that's when build orders come into play. It's knowing, let's say, when I start playing, I should immediately mine 3 lumber, create a barracks, pump out 2 military units, build a library, research X tech, and then go from there. It's the idea of having the most optimal or most efficient starting position that you can get. And the thing about this is whether you're playing a strategy game like StarCraft where things are fixed, or a game like Civilization with randomly placed or spawning resources, you can still come up with an effective build order. Because what you're doing or what your options are at the start are pre-decided based on the design of the game. XCOM, Enemy Unknown, and even the original XCOMs are also examples of when a build or strategy can come into play. If you know the most optimal way of upgrading your squaddies and making money, you can repeat this pretty much reliably on almost every play and get the best possible start. Now, as we've talked about before with the concepts of metagame design or avoiding a metagame, this is not something you want for your game, because once someone has figured out the best build order, it usually means they know the absolute perfect way to play, and this is something that will not change on repeated plays. As we said with the idea of a metagame or with CCGs, once the top net deck has been figured out, you know every player, or everyone who knows where to look, is going to find that and make use of it. And build orders are typically the issue when we talk about single player or competitive based strategy games, especially when it comes to the strategy genre, like games such as Crusader Kings, Civilization, and even stuff with multiplayer like StarCraft. Because if there is 5 things that you must do at the start of every game that will make your life better, then what's to stop someone from just doing that every time and robbing the game of those choices? One of the things that has killed my interest in watching like competitive strategy games such as StarCraft is that it felt like a lot of it was very build order centric. As in, it's not about reading your opponent, but by I have a plan, you have a plan, and we'll see which plan will come out on top. And when you watch professional StarCraft play, you can see how mechanical the first usually like 3 to 5 minutes of a StarCraft match is going to be very routine. Now, of course, if someone has a differing build order, which could be as simple as, let's say, instead of building 2 Marines first, you build 1 Marine and 1 Marauder, or whatever that heavier infantry unit was called in StarCraft 2. And while these are minor deviations, it's still minor deviations on a set pattern. This is why I find it a lot more interesting to watch competitive fighting games or even competitive first-person shooters, wherein it's not so much about having a pre-existing plan, but having a general idea and then adapting to what the opponent throws at you. And typically when we're watching strategy games, what ends up happening is usually one player will either come out on top very quickly because their build order was superior to the first guy or to the other one, or the game will run long as both are just trying to essentially adapt at the end. When things start to change, they're just trying to say, okay, I know he's building this, let me counter with Y, and let me do it before he starts to counter me. But herein lies the big challenge. How do you defend against build orders? And it's not an easy question to answer, and strategy designers have been wrestling with this for years. Again, even with a random map, because the player's options are set each time, it creates a linear series of choices. So even if on one play, let's say the map spawns me with, I don't know, wheat instead of iron, I still know what my options are. I either exploit with a granary, or if I get iron, I get a blacksmith, or I research those respective techs. Now, some strategy games have tried interesting ways of getting around this. A lot of the older style strategy games, specifically the Masters of Orion series, or as fans have called it, Moo, what happens is you have your techs or your upgrades split into different categories. Military, culture, defense, and I haven't played those games in a long time, so I don't know the exact ones. But the research, the specific tech that you get from those categories, is randomly picked each time you unlock it. So what ends up happening is, let's say the first time I play the game and I get a military tech, it's advanced lasers. Lets me build lasers for my ships, basically. The second time I research military, let's say in another game, maybe this time I get rockets or ballistics weapons. Now I have to go down that path. The game Elemental from Stardock also had that feature, and also had an even greater idea of having rarities for your techs. So there is a chance that you could unlock a very specific or very unique tech for each category, which would do something even special or even more special. For instance, with like military sides, you could unlock a archer build or a spearman, or you could unlock dragons that you could ride around or attach to your units. Now, that kind of concept or those kinds of systems are very interesting, and they surely help to keep things from getting routine, but they're also monstrously difficult to balance and fine-tune. Because now it's not just about balancing units, it's about balancing every single research and how they work together with each other. And for a lot of lesser games, it becomes very easy to break these titles, because I know that if I get research C, F, and N, then I'm going to have a superior time and beat my opponent easily. And this is why it becomes very hard to balance or fight against build orders. Now, games like the Crusader Kings series is about giving the player essentially a very giant canvas of options and things you can do in it, and then the game basically grows from that. So if I do one thing, it's going to affect the world and stuff around me this way, which I will then have to adapt to, and then that choice makes more choices, and so on and so forth. So it's not so much about a build order, but it's about basically A leads to B leads to C, and you get the picture. Now, for those of you watching this, can you think of strategy games or any games in particular that have managed to battle build orders? Basically, preventing any one strategy or any one series of commands from being the absolute best way to play it. Of course, besides the Masters of Orion series. Please let me know below. And one other thing I want to mention before we end. XCOM 2 actually had a really good example of battling this idea of build orders with how you had the Foundry, and the Foundry would provide you with randomly generated parts or upgrades that you could then attach to your pieces. Or even just the weapon modification system was a really big part, because you can't rely on getting so-and-so for your item. And it sounds like someone's mowing the lawn outside, so that is the perfect time to end things here. Thank you so much for watching today's Critical Thought. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know if you have a future topic. And be sure to check back daily for more discussions on game design here, and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends, it always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GW for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GW for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.